Welcome. You and me are going to perform a 30-minute lower body intensive workout together. The nice thing is the only equipment we're going to need is our own body weight as well as a set of mini bands. So we can travel and do this workout anywhere we go. So there's really no excuses. Before we get started, we're going to do some myofascial release or soft tissue work as well as a quick warm-up. For that, we're going to need a lacrosse ball or a myofascial release kit as well as a foam roller. Without further ado, let's get started. Like I mentioned before, the only two things we're going to need is going to be a lacrosse ball and a foam roller. The goal with this is for us to do some soft tissue work to be able to help fluid dynamics and provide blood flow to the areas that we're going to be trying to activate throughout the workout. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is take our lacrosse ball. I have a larger myofascial release ball. It's easier for the camera to see. And we're going to put it under our glute. From here, we're going to shift all of our weight onto this side. If it's hard for you to support your body weight because you're not strong enough yet, or maybe mobility is a problem, use some yoga blocks, put the yoga blocks under your hand. And then from here, the leg that doesn't have the lacrosse ball under the glute will be locked out. The opposite side will stay bent. We're going to take 10 deep breaths. And we're just going to think of trying to abduct, getting our knee to the ground. And then adduct, bringing our knee all the way back toward our body. As you're taking deep breaths, I want you to remember the goal is to try to relax on this ball as much as you can, so that I can get into the deeper parts of the tissue and not the superficial outside layer. So again, just really take your time. I know it's uncomfortable. If you want to make small circles and keep your leg in one position, if you find a spot that's really tender, just stay right there. But again, the goal is to search for tissue that needs some love and attention, that's giving you some sensory feedback. If it doesn't hurt, it's not that it doesn't need the work, but I would try to find a place elsewhere on your body that does have some sensitivity. Okay, one more deep breath. Okay, we'll switch sides. Again, super important that we take the time and we're patient and we do these things before we work out. This is going to help improve our performance in our workout as well as lower our risk of injury. And again, this only takes a minute or two. And while we're doing this, we can start to slowly focus, get out of our headspace of maybe us sitting at our desk or maybe after a long day of work or taking care of our kids or whatever it may be. We can try to think of the task at hand and think about how important it is today that we're trying to work out and better ourselves and just kind of mentally focus up. Again, you can play around. You can try locking your leg out, coming into flexion, bringing it all the way up. Any sort of movement that you want to put your body into on top of the lacrosse ball is going to be beneficial. But again, deep breaths, do your best to relax. Try to stay as upright as you can to have the weight of your torso pressing down on the ball. If you lean back too far, it'll take some weight away and it won't be as painful, but you might not also be as efficient. Second thing, after we worked on our glutes, we now want to work on our quads. So we're going to take a foam roller. I'm going to lay down on the foam roller with one leg off of it, and I'm going to use that leg for support, and the opposite leg is going to be the leg that I'm working on. Now, the goal is to come almost all the way up to my hip flexor, and then pull myself with my forearms, and my other foot is almost weightless on the ground, okay? I'm going to pull myself all the way forward, deep breath out until I get right above my knee. Again, the concept of 10 deep breaths here. Make sure we're not arching and going in too much extension. We're trying to keep a somewhat neutral spine. It's a great way to also warm up your core a little. Then we're going to rotate our leg. Maybe now we keep it more neutral. If we find a spot that's real painful, we can just go into flexion and extension of our knee and just kind of manipulate that tissue over the foam roller. We can rotate over to our side. Do some of our IT band. If you're a runner, sometimes this tissue gets extremely tight and it causes a little bit of tension in your knee. Again, 10 deep breaths, and then we're switching sides. If it's really, really painful and you don't want to do one leg at a time, you can also do both legs to take some weight away and not be so specified. Okay, opposite side again. So throughout today's workout, the concept is going to be we're going to try to do some big movement patterns that are going to help us burn a lot of calories and work important musculature that needs to be strong in some ranges of motion that we need to maintain and keep as we get older. Our quality of life is going to be a lot better if we move well. And part of moving well is taking our body through these ranges of motion frequently. And if we do that with load, if we can move through them properly, we'll be able to work on getting stronger. The fact that we're also doing lower body today is going to help us burn a little more calories than if we were working on a smaller muscle group. So if you're someone who is trying to change your body composition and you need calories out to be higher, this is a great way to do so. Okay, so we finished both legs of our lacrosse ball myofascial release on our glute, as well as our quad foam roll. So now we're going to work on a little bit of spine health, and we're going to do some thoracic extension. Now, if you're someone that's had major surgery on your neck or your upper back, this is something you want to be extremely careful with and maybe not even do. Again, I'm not with you. I can't advise what to do. This is just a generalized concept of what you should do for upper back posture and health. While we're laying on the foam roller and upper back is on it, we want our hands on our head. I'm going to go into a posterior pelvic tilt, thinking of pushing my lower back down to the ground. And I'm going to take a deep breath out. And I'm going to try to relax my head down to the ground. After a couple of deep breaths, I reset. What I do not want is this, me just arching my back, trying to go into as much extension as I can. I'm trying to focus on my thoracic spine. I'm going through thoracic extension. Again, posterior pelvic tilt, deep breaths out. One more. Ooh, couple of cracks. And again, do as many of these as you feel fit. Roll up and down, work on a new spot of your back. But it's so important that you keep that tilt. Look at the difference. Look how far I can get my head down if I really let my lower back and lumbar go into extension. With all the sitting we do at our desks and we're really rounded and kyphotic, this is a wonderful way to try to loosen up some of the tissue that's next to our spine and for us to take our spine through a range of motion. That's going to slowly help restore some of the health of it. Again, if you get extreme pain, please skip over this. So that concludes us doing our myofascial release work. Now we're going to move on to our movement prep. Next, we're going to be doing some movement prep. We're going to try to replicate some of the movement patterns that we're going to be performing today so we can feel comfortable in them, as well as help promote some blood flow to the rest of our body. First thing we're going to do is get into a push-up position, and we're going to do some of the world's greatest stretch. It's a big statement. From a push-up position, we're going to take one foot and bring it all the way outside of our hand, and then we're going to rotate that arm all the way up to the ceiling. Deep breath out. When we return down, we will try to reach our elbow down to the ground if we have that mobility. Then we switch sides. We're going to be doing 10 of these per side. You're going to learn a lot about your body here. You might feel one side is a little bit tighter. Maybe it's a little more challenging for you to try to get your elbow down. One thing we want to make sure is that we're not picking our toes up off of the ground and rotating our foot to the side here and pushing our knee too far out. That just goes some of the lack of hip mobility that we have, and we'll address that separately. If this is too challenging, the regression is keeping our knees on the ground, maintaining a neutral spine, and going through the same pattern. Again, we're going to do 10 of these on each side. If you can, really reach down. Try to get that elbow to the floor. Within our warm-ups, we want to try to be as efficient as we possibly can because I want to save you guys time so you can spend that time doing things you love, spending it with your family, getting more done at work, so you can take more time off down the road, whatever it may be. I want us to be efficient. That's why I'm making some of these workouts. When I go to a gym, it pains me to see people not being efficient. And the fact that you're watching this, hopefully, on one of your devices means you're not on it, typing away on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, whatever it may be. I use this phrase a lot to my clients. When you're in a library, you go there to read and get work done or study. This is your library. You're here for a reason, okay? You're here to work hard and to change your body for the better. Let's make sure we're doing that. Okay, after we finish 10 repetitions on each side, we're gonna move on. The second thing we're gonna perform is gonna be some clamshells with a band. I want you to take this band. We're gonna be putting it on our knees. Make sure you don't rip any hair off. Okay, so it's right below my knees. Again, I'm using Perform Better bands. I find them a little bit better as far as elasticity and strength and how long they'll last. Whatever brand you have works. From here, I go into a kneeling side plank position. Shoulder stacked under my elbow, stacked under my shoulder blades are retracted. I'm gonna open up my top hip as much as I can, work my glutes and my abductors, and we're gonna do 15 repetitions. If this is too challenging, or it's painful on your shoulder, you can always come down, not press your hips up, and just do clamshells this way. It's also effective. I prefer the other way, so I can get some blood flow to my core, start to fire that. And again, if your heart rate's a little higher doing one variation and you can handle it, you're gonna burn more calories. It's gonna work on your conditioning a little bit more. And 15. Good. Switch sides. It's amazing how many things you can do with these bands. One of my favorite investments that's gonna last a long time and you can travel with. When we work out, we wanna think of, if we're purchasing equipment, what equipment is gonna be multifaceted? Like what can we do 100 exercises with instead of it being for only one or two things? It's one of the problems with machines. These big bulky machines, sure, they're great for doing a couple of pieces of, a couple of movement patterns, but outside of that, they're useless. So learning how to perform these movement patterns with bands, dumbbells, kettlebells, all these free weights, so important. We can do so much with them. If we show up to a gym when we're traveling, now your exercise library is huge. So now you know there's a ton of variety of things you can do. Okay, 15 on each side. Moving on. Oh, let's take this band off. Again, we're gonna work on our hip health. We're gonna do some hip cars. From a tabletop position, I want you to kick one foot all the way up back behind you while maintaining a neutral spine. I'm not arching my back and going into extension. Neutral spine. After I kick my foot up behind me at 90 degrees, I then go into external rotation, and then I bring my knee all the way up into flexion as much as I can, trying to hit my elbow. The pacing of this should be rather slow. Maybe 3 seconds per rep. We're gonna be doing 10 repetitions per side. Again, work on keeping that belly tight, not going through much movement. It's like a bird dog in that way. Bird dog is a wonderful exercise for spinal stability and being able to control your core in the sense of maintaining a neutral spine with a lot of movement going on from your lower body and pelvis. Deep breaths. Cars are one of my favorite things to do as a warm-up for my shoulders and my hips. Super complex joints. We need to maintain full range of motion. And if we don't have full range of motion, we need to understand what is tight tissue-wise and what we need to work on. Okay, because it's gonna get tougher as we get older to fix these things. Neutral spine, leg up, external rotation, big circle. Kick, rotate. Again, not going fast here, slow and controlled. I'm trying to not shift my weight away onto this right side. Just trying to stay balanced. I'm sweating already. It's a good thing. We don't want to go into these workouts cold and just try to perform some of these movements. The stress of our day, the lack of movement in our body, these are all going to increase our risk of injury if we're not taking care of ourselves prior. Last one. All right, there you have it. Awesome little warm-up. Now we're going to get started to the actual meat and potatoes of the workout, or if you're a vegetarian, the vegetables and fruits of the workout. First circuit of things we're going to perform today, the only piece of equipment we're going to need is going to be a mini band as well as a wall. The first thing we're going to start with today is going to be a split squat. We're going to be doing 30 seconds of an isometric split squat hold. Again, I want to start slow with you guys and I want us to kind of warm tissue up and we'll make it progressively harder as we go throughout the workout. So the first thing we want to think about is front foot flat on the floor, back foot on our toes, okay? We want to try to get as low to the ground as we possibly can. Hold this position for 30 seconds, okay? I want my knee to track over my toes. I do not want it to collapse in, and we're just going to hold here. So I'm going to start a timer, 30 seconds, starting now. Some of the things I want to think about. I want a slight forward torso lean. If you realize I'm not 100% vertical, displacing my weight evenly between my two legs, I want a little bit more weight on my front leg, okay? This is a single-legged movement in that way. Second thing, we want to stay as close to 90 degrees as we possibly can. The higher I stand, if you're having a hard time with this, go right ahead. Do whatever you need to fit your difficulty level. But the lower we go, the more challenging and the deeper range of motion we're going to be able to work on, as well as work some of the tissue of our glute and hamstring. Good. Okay. Let's go ahead and switch sides. Show you from a different angle now. Again, all the way down, 90 degrees, slight lean forward. Shoulders back, tight belly, holding this position. Again, we want to think of corkscrewing our foot into the ground so that our knee does not collapse in. We want to activate our glute and make sure that knee stays traveling in the direction of our toes. Good neck posture, not looking down. Isometric work like this is great for working on muscular endurance. We're also strengthening the tissue around the joint of our knee. It's going to help with stability of the joint. And it's a low impact, so it's not going to cause as much soreness, nor is it going to be as much wear and tear on your knee as a lot more movement would be. And good. Ooh, burns. Okay, next, we're going to need that mini band I mentioned before, as well as a wall. So we're going to step inside of our mini band, and I want this to be right below our knees. Second step, we're going to use a wall. We're going to be putting one foot up against the wall, opposite foot out in front of us. Now, the distance of this foot, when you hinge over, okay, to about 45 degrees, and you have a slight bend in the front knee, the back knee should be behind the knee that the foot is on the floor, okay? Then you're in the right position. From here, we're gonna be going into abduction, and we're gonna leave our foot loosely on the wall. Our foot is gonna rotate, and it will come up. It's not gonna be flat. We're gonna be doing 15 repetitions here of these fire hydrants. So let's go ahead and get set up. Let's do 15 of these together. Bend to the knee, slight hinge forward, working our glutes. Open up that hip as much as I can. Now, range of motion, super important. If you're doing this here, guys, small range, we're not working our glutes as effectively as we could. Deep breaths. The bottom knee has to work on stability. That glute is firing to keep that knee in line. This is one of my favorite exercises to work our glutes, work my quads. They were just working there on that split squat. They're going to continue to work. Keep good posture. And 15. Woo-wee, burns. Okay. Next leg, foot against the wall. Same concept. Opposite hip, open all the way up. And again, depending on the brand of the bands that you guys have, I'm using a green Perform Better band. You might need to use yellow. Deep breaths. Again, try not to stay upright. If you stay upright, your glute is not going to fire. We need you to hip hinge and think of pushing your butt back a little as you perform this. If we need to hold on to something for balance, we can. But again, it's one of the great parts of this exercise is working on the stability component. And 15. Woo. Beautiful. Okay. Final exercise. We're going to do some core work here. Everyone knows a good old plank, right? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to get into a forearm plank position. We're going to have our legs locked out behind us. We're going to be doing 45 seconds. So as soon as you're ready, get yourself set up. 3, 2, 1. Good. Most important thing here, guys. I want my shoulders stacked over my elbows. If you get further back, it's going to make it more challenging, so go right ahead. Number 2, arching your back is just going to work your erectors. You want to think of a posterior pelvic tilt, okay? I'm tucking my pelvis, squeezing my butt, and then just holding this position. We're going to hold this for 45 total seconds. Staying calm. Deep breaths. I want to make sure that I'm protracting my shoulder blades. I'm pushing myself away from the ground as much as I can. I'm not just lazily falling down. Deep breaths, deep breaths. Again, make sure we're not arching. Tuck that pelvis, squeeze that butt. Three, two, one. Beautiful, guys. All right, that concludes that circuit. We're going to take a small rest, and then we're going to come on back. See you in a sec. New circuit, new movement patterns. We're going to be using only a mini band for this circuit. I'm using something that's a little thicker than last round. I'm using a blue Perform Better. Use whatever you see fit, or use multiple bands at the same time. The first thing we're going to perform is going to be a squat, but we're going to do this with a mini band around our shins, and we're going to do this to help from sensory output, or at least proprioceptively get our glutes to activate more in our squat. So with my neutral squat position for myself, feet are straight, a little wider than shoulder width. There's no right or wrong way, whatever feels right for you and your hip anatomy. I'm going to descend down into my squat, and as I descend down, I'm thinking of corkscrewing my feet, pushing my knees out. Like, look how much movement I can get from my knees, and that's all from my femurs and my hip. Externally rotating, and I'm squatting down, standing tall, squeezing my butt and belly. Again, if I don't do that sensation, my knees collapse in. If I think of corkscrewing, pushing against the band, I open up my hips. We're going to do a set of 25 squats with this band on. As soon as you guys are ready and you got your band on, let's get started. Deep breaths in on the way down, out on the way up. Again, thinking of corkscrewing my feet into the ground, making sure I push my hips open, making some space for me to get low. It's going to also keep me more vertical torso angled. From the side, you can see I'm able to maintain a somewhat vertical torso. Depending on your ankle mobility, you may or may not be able to stay this upright. You may look more like this, which isn't wrong, but hypothetically, if you're holding a load to your chest, your lever arm of your lower back would be doing a little bit more work than it would need to. So we might need to either work on proprioceptively, you knowing how to stay more vertical and doing some drills, maybe against a wall with your hands up against the wall, making yourself stay more vertical, or just working on your ability to go into dorsiflexion in your ankle to let your knees track forward more to stay more upright. Almost done. Depth is important, so make sure we're going to full range of motion and we're not doing these shallow squats. Great, okay. Next movement pattern, we're gonna leave the band on. We're gonna be doing 45 seconds of a lateral band walk. Our heart rate was just elevated from that round of squats. Now let's let it come down, but keep it somewhat elevated by going right into this, taking huge lateral steps. As you can see, I have bent knee, bent hip, and we're going back and forth. We got 45 seconds of this guy. I got my hands on my butt because that's the musculature I'm working right now. My glute, part of my glute is in charge of abduction, moving my leg away from my body. So that's what we're working on here. Again, from the sides, this is what it looks like. Slight hinge to my hips. I'm making sure when I step, my foot's in line with my knee. It's not collapsing in. Thinking of that corkscrewing, external rotation again. Belly's tight, good neck posture. Woo, almost there. Hips are burning. And we're gonna pair a core exercise with this that's gonna keep that going here. In 3, 2, beautiful, okay. Now, third, final movement pattern here. We're gonna do some kneeling side plank abduction holds. So what that's going to look like. Kneeling side plank. Start there. Shoulder. Elbow stacked directly under it. Shoulder blades retracted. Hips are pressed all the way forward. I push through my bottom knee and I get my hips up in the air. Easy peasy, right? From here, I'm going to take my top leg and lock it out and try to keep it in line with my torso. Top arm can reach over my head, up to the sky, on my hips. Again, hips are forward, butt's tight, belly's tight, shoulder blades are back. Hips are high, deep breaths. Staying calm. If this is too easy, you can always lock your legs out, do a normal side plank, and if you want to step the intensity up, you can pick that leg up as well. Whatever you're feeling. I'm coming back to what you guys are doing. Because of the two exercises we just did, we're very glute dominant. This is gonna burn in your glutes. Make sure your center of gravity isn't getting back too far. And good there. Make sure your center of gravity is not getting back too far and that you're stacked over your shoulder. Make sure you're doing a good job of breathing. Hips up, legs straight. Arms can go overhead and reach. Try to work on stretching your lat out. You can even have a band above your head, pulling your arm. Again, working on stretching some tissue out at the same time. Don't have those hips sag. Make sure you're really pressing through the bottom hip, getting the hips up as high as you possibly can. Woo-wee. Sweating. This is a great circuit so far. A lot of glute dominant stuff here. Deep breaths. Almost there. 3, 2, woo, okay. And that wraps that circuit up, guys. Big glute one. Take a small rest. I'm gonna see you in a second here. Good stuff. Final circuit, 3 more exercises. The only piece of equipment you're gonna need again is a mini band. I'm using a green Perform Better band for this round. First thing we're gonna do, laying face up, we're going right back to those glutes. I'm gonna show you a second variation of which we can perform this. So while I'm laying down on the ground face up, I want one leg on the ground that's bent at about 90-degree knee angle bend. The opposite leg is gonna be just hanging out up in the air. You can lock it out and keep it here. If you have tight hamstrings, you can keep it bent. Shoulder blades are back. I'm gonna push through the heel of the foot on the ground, get my hips high, squeeze my butt. Now my spine stays neutral the whole time. We're gonna be doing 15 repetitions of these single-legged glute bridges, okay? Let's go ahead and get started. As I push my hips up, again, I focus on squeezing the glute of the foot that's on the ground. I do not wanna over-exaggerate and arch my back extra at the top. You're just gonna work your erectors of your lower back by doing that, which is not what we're going for. I'm doing good tempo. I'm slowing myself on the way down. If you want to make this more challenging, you can hold at the top for a few seconds. You can put a weight on your hip. But all this glute stuff we did today, this is enough. Feel this in my glute and my hamstring. If you feel this in your quad too much, extend your leg further away from yourself and see if that helps. You might just be someone that has like glute amnesia, or you have a harder time firing the tissue of your hamstring and glute. So we might need to do some activation work and some mobility myofascial release work to help you work on that tissue. Last one. Woof, back of my leg burning. Okay, next side. Now, if we want to make this more challenging for the next round that we do this, or the next time we perform this exercise, what you can do is do a single-legged hip thrust. Instead of your lower back being on the ground, it's on a bench or an elevated surface to increase our range of motion and to put more weight over our center of gravity of our hips. Keep that belly tight and braced. I like to think of almost keeping a posterior pelvic tilt as I do this, kind of like that plank we did before. Almost there. Last 2. And good. Woo. Okay, all finished there. But we're going to keep those glutes working. We're going to grab that band that I mentioned we needed before, and we're going to put this around our knees, and then we're going to get into a tabletop position. From that tabletop position, we're going to do the fire hydrants that we did before. We're going to do 15 of those. But instead of doing it from a standing position, now we're doing it from tabletop. So I press through my hands. I pick my knees up off the floor. I open up one hip as much as I can. I'm on my toes. My foot rotates to the side. We're going to do 15 repetitions here. Nice and slow. Really open that hip up as much as you can. Try to get the leg that's not moving to resist falling inward so you can activate that glute as well. Make sure you're in a neutral spine and we're not arching our back and doing this, right? Again, I don't want your erectors to work. Neutral spine. If you're someone that your wrists are overworking here, if we get something that will elevate your wrist or the palm so you're not in so much flexion, that's going to make this a little bit easier. Let's go to the other side now. 15. Same with if this is too much for you and it's hard for you to keep your knees up off the ground, elevate one knee and now just do the same thing, but we just don't need to be doing the core work at the same time. Okay? Whatever works best for yourself. I want you to get the best workout possible out of this, and I want you to be motivated to progress. So even if you can't do it, look at it as a positive. You're going to get to work up to that ability soon. Almost done. Deep breaths. Oh man, I'm sweating all over this mat. And 15. Okay, moving on. We're going to be doing bird dogs now. This is core work, but it's not going to burn in your core like some of the other exercises. So please don't get disheartened if you don't feel anything in that way, okay? Concept here, neutral spine, no pelvic tilt either way, okay? Neutral spine. I brace my belly, I keep it nice and tight. From here, I'm going to alternate opposite arm, opposite leg. I might kick this foam roller. And then I lock out my limbs and I slowly bring them both back to neutral. The idea is to resist going into extension and then rounding into flexion. So we're going to do 10 reps, nice and slow. Try to keep pace with me. My toes point to the ground. When I lock my leg out behind me, I try to get my arm next to my ear. Deep breaths. The concept here is spinal stability, and I'm trying to maintain a neutral spine while there's a lot of movement happening in my pelvis for me to lock my leg out. Almost there. Last one. Good. Stuart McGill is a world-renowned physical therapist, and this is one of his favorite exercises to rehab people from injuries of their lower back, as well as just help strengthen and help work on the proprioception, the connection of your mind-muscle relationship to be able to maintain good positioning while going through movement of your spine. Nice and slow. Again, this one won't burn in your core, but it serves a really important function. Slow and steady. If you want to put a band around your feet so that when you extend your leg out, you're doing a little more glute work, also an option. Last one. Might have done an extra. That's okay. Whew. All right, guys, well done. You're all finished up for the day. Rest a little bit, get some water, recover after this, have some protein, get some sleep tonight. Proud of you. Thank you for working hard today. Thank you for showing up and being here with me. I'll see you soon. Ooh-wee, I'm sweating, guys. Thank you again for being here with me. I appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed the workout. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. I look forward to seeing you at the next one of these. Keep working hard. Keep taking care of yourself. Your future self will thank you. See you in the next one.